behind the scenes, promising my sister to be a loyal part of her court definitely wasn't how I expected to be celebrating the new year, especially with my parents seated on either side of her glimmering throne beaming with pride. It wasn't unusual for fed-up royals to hand over the keys to the kingdom as soon as their heir became of age. In this case, my normally easygoing and caring parents had finally reached the end of their tether when it came to ruling the land of Fae. After the bickerings of the seasonal courts over the last couple of months, particularly the summer and winter courts, it came as no surprise to me that the king and queen of Fae had handed the reins, while they had officially announced my older sister as the heir to the Fae throne anyway. I was proud of Ilaria, well as proud as I could be of the selfish, vain and borderline emotionally abusive woman that was my older sister. She wasn't even a woman, she was a girl pretending to be an adult. I know journaling is meant to be a therapeutic practice, but to be honest, this whole experience is proving to be the exact opposite at this present moment in time. Perhaps future me will find these words beneficial. As the top graduate of my sorcery class at the academy, I was meant to be spending my first year out of school training with the Royal Fae Army to be a sorcerer. Instead, I was thrust into the role as the Queen in Training's assistant and only allowed to work towards my dream career part-time. According to most of the population of Fae, the media, and of course my parents, I should feel incredibly honored to be able to assist my older sister in her journey to one day be the main ruler of Fae. It was safe to say that I did not feel the same way. Instead, I saw this gig as a prison of some sorts, both metaphorically and literally, considering the forbidding stone walls of the palace and the hundreds of soldiers patrolling the premises every day. Perhaps if I liked my sister, then I would enjoy the opportunity to help her to reach her full potential, but I didn't. Princess Ilaria, my elder sister of 600 years was, well, perhaps if I give context to how she was decried by my parents and the media, then my attitude towards her will begin to make sense. The polite terms of confident and lively really meant full of herself and loud. She is always talking aloud. Whether this was a sign of her own stupidity or whether she actually believes people are listening, I don't know, yet I do know that she believes anything she says is gospel and that the sun shines out of her. But, basically, gorgeous and the perfect royal were terms also flung around in the media, although my mother was the only one to call her actually gorgeous to her face. The truth of the matter was, my parents didn't create aesthetically pleasing children, and that was okay. I know I was average looking, by Fae standards anyway, and that was something I just had to accept. Looks meant so little in the grand scheme of things after all. By caking her pale features with brightly colored blushes and attempting to darken the famously scarlet tresses the royal family, my family, are famous for, Ilaria was as superficial as they came. I had always known that I would eventually have to vow to my sister to be a loyal subject of her court, especially as the only princess of her kingdom and her main royal assistant, or slave as she would probably treat me. I just didn't realize I would have to step into my royal duties so soon. I guess a hidden, unspoken part of me had hoped that my parents would royal for at least another 700 years, wait till I was 2,600 years old at least. To have a 2,500-year-old monarch was basically unheard of. She was too young to rule, yet apparently my parents just didn't care at this point. They were over the politics and the drama. I couldn't blame them, not really. I had barely any royal responsibilities at the moment due to only recently have graduated from the academy, yet the nature of the details I had overheard had me grateful that I would never rule. The heads of the seasonal courts were all such dramatic and theatrical people. My sister would fit right in. Pushing her age and unfortunate childish tendencies aside, I still was unsure about vowing my life to serve her. Our differences had always been obvious, especially in our formative years. Thanks to my natural talent for enchantments and spellcraft, I had spent most of my childhood investigating my own abilities by myself in the sprawling majestic grounds of the palace or with private tutors specializing in magic. My sister, on the other hand, being the heir to the throne and an only child for 600 years, spent her childhood bathing in attention practically 24/7. I knew that her current unfortunate demeanor was partly because of this constant pampering, but also because of her natural personality. The old nature versus nurture debate always did repeat itself. To start,
Gift of love. Well, what do you think, John? Asked the pastor. I don't know, Sam. The leak could have come from several places because it is a widespread leak. We know this is part of the original exterior wall, and that adjacent brick structure was the chimney that was part of the original boiler. This church is over 100 years old, so I won't know anything until I get in there, said John as he looked through the attic beams trying to pinpoint where the leak was coming from. The trails of water were still damp where then ran down the length of the brick wall. They came back out of the stairwell that went up into the attic to see that the leak had not bothered anything on the second floor. For some reason, it bypassed everything upstairs, flowing down the brick of the chimney to show itself in the stairwell by the sanctuary doors. John looked over the wall downstairs where the leak left its ugly brown stripes on the white plastered. This plaster will all have to be removed and replaced once we find where the leak came from. No sense in doing it now. The congregation will just have to look past it until we find the source. Do you have any kind of timeline when you can get started? I know you are slammed right now. This was a bad winter. I will look over my schedule. This is my church too, so I get it. I will call you next week. Thanks, John, said Sam as the last of the talkers were leaving the sanctuary. The Sunday service had slowly been growing, now that people were getting vaccinated and the pandemic itself seemed to be slowing just a bit. But this leak was the last thing Sam wanted to see. The past year had been an uphill battle, but he was grateful that he had an IT team that was able to create the ability to stream the services. Some churches were faring a lot worse than they were because they had not seen the need for this technology. Now many were scrambling to catch up, and some found it easier to just close their doors for a while, hoping to recoup once they could reopen. As Sam came through the greeting area, he saw Miss Edna with her walker making her way to the door. Her daughter was following by her side. Good morning, Miss Edna. How are you and Jessica doing today? Oh, I am fine as frog hair, she chuckled in her upbeat voice. I am so glad we were able to get back to church in person. She doesn't see the computer screen well, said Jessica. I am 93 years old. I want to see people face to face, not through some contraption on my dining room table. But, she nodded gently, for those few months I was glad we were able to at least hear the word. Thank you for that, Pastor Sam. You are always welcome. You are an inspiration to us all with your happy and determined spirit. That's how you get to be 90, she chuckled as Jessica hit the elevator button to go down to the main floor. So tell me, have we got squirrels again? Sam looked at her oddly, wonder what she meant. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you are referring to. The stains on the wall. I remember back in the 1930s when I was a child, we had that tornado that came through. The one that knocked off the steeple. There was a family of squirrels that got in there during the rebuilding and made a big ol' nest in the old chimney that caused a leak like that. Might want to check that out. Well, I have John working on it. I will let him know. He is a good man. Alright then, we will see you next week. Are you not going to come on the Zoom call on Wednesday? Oh, yes. We will be there, assured Jessica. It ain't the same. I will be glad when we can come back on Wednesdays too. Me too, Miss Edna. Maybe by fall. We will see. Well, it makes no sense to me, she stated emphatically. We are open for Sundays unless people come on Wednesday. You should let it go, Mom. Pastor is making sure everyone is safe. And he is following the guidelines set up by the state. Miss Edna shook her head. Sorry, Pastor. I know you are doing the best you can. It's okay. I am glad you care that much. I am afraid some will now use this technology as an excuse to never come back to church. They would rather stay in the pajamas and watch it online. Or go play and watch online when they feel like it. It kind of loses its impact if you get lazy with it. That's right, God don't care for laziness, said Edna as she got on the elevator. Pastor Sam chuckled as they left, thinking about what she said. A squirrel? I don't think a squirrel could cause that amount of moisture damage we saw in the attic, he mumbled to himself as he walked back to his office. The following Tuesday, John called the church to let Sam know he could have a crew to at least investigate where the moisture was coming from on Friday morning. Depending on what they found would determine if he would be able to fix it. On Friday morning, the church was surrounded by large equipment with ladder extensions and a crew of 5 men.